Hey, beautiful people, it's your realtor, April Foster, on Real Talk AF. Now, today, we're going to be speaking with Nathan Webb, a man who absolutely knows the value of hard work. Now, he graduated with a bachelor's in computer science from Northwestern Oklahoma State University. He worked with his father at the young, tender age of 14 in construction. He also drilled for oil and natural gases all across West Texas. And did I mention that he started and managed businesses in the Middle East and here in these United States? Now, he's a realtor in California and Georgia. He's a father of four beautiful children. He's a husband and he advises on 1031 exchanges for clients while acquiring and investing in properties for REITs, real estate investment trusts, which is exactly why we're here today. Now, I call this man my friend, but I'm sure that after this conversation, you'll want to call him your friend too. Now, I'm going to introduce you, but before I do, let's hear a word from our sponsors. This ain't your grandmama's ugly. Listen, it's a lifestyle, a movement, and a brand. Get your ugly shirts at www.uglybyaprilsanpay.com. Ugly, understand God loves you. All right, beautiful people, I told you all that I am going to be talking to my good friend, Nathan Webb, and pretty soon he will be yours too, I promise. So, Nathan, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Look, it's been brought to my attention that you know all things 1031 exchange. And if that is the case, can you please tell us what is a 1031 exchange?
Well, it's a large, complicated, gray section of the tax code. So it's not fun to get into details about, so I'll make it basic and simple for you. It is a way to trade real property for real property and basically pay no taxes. They're deferred and possibly forever if you do it right, but you don't owe any taxes on the sale of that property that you would normally owe. Your capital gains taxes, state and federal, depreciation recapture, Medicare taxes, all of those things don't have to pay. You get to take 100% of your money, trade it up into real estate or better cash flowing real estate and pay no taxes.
So, okay, let me make this make sense. If I buy a house for $1 million, that's an investment property. Every year I'm going to depreciate that. Am I correct?
Yep. And you can even do rapid depreciation on certain assets. Yep.
What exactly is rapid depreciation?
Commonly called cost segregation. And it's a way that a tax specialist would look at your property and basically line item by line item, rapidly depreciate your property, say, oh, well, this deteriorates this fast. And so this is, we're going to take this much off of depreciation. So you can do all of that. But then your property could be fully depreciated in 5 years. Which could normally take, over 20 to 30.
So if I bought it for $1 million, when you say rapidly depreciate the property within 5 years, what, let's say amount would that look like? So can it go from 1 million to 100,000 over the course of 5 years?
I'm going to defer to a tax specialist on that one who does those cost segregation studies because it's their name on the line, not mine.
Okay.
I'm sure a lot of things are possible, but to speak to depreciation, if you did do that, let's just call it an even 500,000. You would owe 25% of that 500,000 back on the sale of that property in depreciation recapture. Okay. That is also, you don't have to pay. It's deferred if you do utilize a 1031 exchange.
So if again, 500,000, I depreciate it, but then I sell it for $500,000 or even more than 500,000. Well, I've already depreciated.
You bought it for $1 million. You bought it for $1 million. You depreciated 500,000. So we're still, let's say of course, it appreciated as well. So you're selling it for $1.5 million. Mm-hmm. you're going to owe a certain amount of taxes on that extra 500,000 as well, depending on state income levels, a lot of different factors. So you would also owe that. So you would defer those taxes as well if you utilize a 1031 exchange.
I'm making it so that I am winning no matter what, right?
To a degree, there's always a catch, right? They're always trying to write in a catch, right? And this is the big one. It's not tax forgiveness, it's tax deferral. So technically, those taxes on that sale of that property are going to follow you into the next one. You have to buy real property with those funds. You can't, okay, well, now I'm going to go buy a car. It's not going to work. You need to go into more real estate, but you can go into one other property, two other properties, a bigger property, multiple smaller properties. You can go into oil and gas royalties. You can go into there's all kinds of real estate out there that qualifies.
So that would be like
the taxes from the first property will follow you into any properties you go into.
Okay.
So if you sold that second property and just cashed out, they would look back at the first property and say, well, you owe taxes on that too.
Oh, wow.
Which is why people who do the 1031, they keep doing it. And then they'll end up putting their property into a living trust. And currently, they can pass that living trust on to their heirs. And their heirs, when they pass away, will receive a reset tax basis so they don't owe your taxes. You can currently completely forgive them that way.
That is ridiculously awesome. And why don't more of us know about it? Okay, so the average person wants to buy investment properties. Tell me why, but you just told me for the most part why a person would want to get a 1031 exchange. Tell me why a person wouldn't want to get a 1031 exchange.
That's a great question. I don't know. If they took a loss, and people do buy real estate for various reasons. They get really complicated on their taxes. I'm not going to pretend to be a tax advisor. I'm a 1031 exchange accommodator, so I know that part of the tax code really well. And there are people who will write off a loss on a property and use it against their other properties that are performing really well. So they may not want to take do a 1031 off of that because they're writing off a loss. So there's maybe not any appreciation really, not a whole lot of depreciation or capital. So there's a lot of things. There's reasons why, but for the most part, there's not a reason you shouldn't. If you're doing real estate investment, you should be looking into a 1031 exchange every time. The only time I've advised people not to do a 1031 exchange for the reason that there is some timelines that are required with a 1031 exchange. You basically have to make the exchange right away. You don't get years or months to really do it. You get 45 days and you need to be doing something. You need to be saying, my money is going here, here, or here right away. And so there is some stress involved, but also there's people who they don't have that much depreciation that they have to pay. They don't have that much appreciation of the property. It's a few $1,000s, and so their taxes are going to be $5,000 or something. It's like, is it worth the stress for you? For some it is, but for others it's not. And it really depends on size and a lot of different factors. And I consult on these on a regular basis. I tell people, look, you got a situation, call me. Let's try and figure this out, because every possibility for a 1031 exchange is different.
Do people need to contact you before placing that property on the market?
Not necessarily. So I think it's a good idea I'm open for you talking to me about I'm thinking about selling this in, 2 months down the line. This is my situation. Can I do that? And I can say, this is how it could be done or what should be done. And I've been able to help alleviate some potential problems that could come up. And I love doing that. I love helping people figure that out. But if you need to do a 1031 exchange and you're already in escrow, in order to actually set up your qualified intermediary account and do everything, I just need a week to do that. So you can contact me in escrow. Don't contact me the day of closing and ask for something. because that's going to be, we're working in the banking world. There's a lot of hands in there. There's a lot of people you're working with. Money has to be wired and transferred. Documents have to be created. So those things don't happen in an 8-hour day.
Okay. So I want you to, if you don't mind, walk me through what certain things mean. Okay.
Sure.
So what is an REIT, real estate, what is it? Real estate investment trust. What
Correct.
Exactly would that be?
It is a trust. That is full of real estate, basically. And it has to be a certain size. I mean, you have private, you have public, but it's a bunch of real estate all over.
Is it like a mutual fund for real estate?
It has a stock that you can buy from it, and it will have a dividend attached to it. So it's more like buying a stock. That's a real estate investment trust. You're buying shares of a trust, not a percentage of real property. So there, since we've kind of jumped over to REITs, there is a way that you can actually do a 1031 exchange, or it's actually called a 721 exchange, where you can trade real property for shares of a REIT. You can only do that once. You can't keep doing it because it is changing from real estate, real property, to shares of a trust. But you can really only do that once. You can't then take those shares of a trust and go back to real property. But we're getting into like the big side of the investment world when I'm talking about that. But there are options to get into, to sell your property and get into a real estate investment trust. Yes.
Does that mean, let's say, for instance, I sold my property, I made tons of money off of that property, and maybe I want to invest in building a football stadium.
Okay.
Would that fall under a REIT?
If the builder of the football stadium is a REIT already, you could potentially do that. However, if you wanted to sell your property and buy the land for the football stadium and use extra funds, from wherever else, from other partners, from a bank, to build something like a football stadium, that's still real property. You can do a 1031 from real property. It doesn't matter. You don't have to sell a house and buy a house. You can sell land and buy, a duplex or an apartment building, or, a manufacturing facility. Those, as long as it's real property. The difference would be you can't sell property and buy shares of a business or an LLC. You have to be attached to real property. So the simple way to look at that is, if there's title to it, you're selling title, you're buying title. That's the way you have to do it. What
is sponsored due diligence?
Sponsored due diligence. So if you are doing, so there's Delaware statutory trusts out there. There's other syndicators and partnerships out there where they are doing due diligence on a property as an investment. That could be a 1031 exchange opportunity. It could be just a normal investment opportunity. And they are doing their due diligence. So they're saying, hey, this is where it's at. This is what's going on. These are the problems. This is the forecast for how the project's going to work out, the returns we're expecting. And that due diligence could be very complete. It couldn't be very complete. But if it's done by a sponsor, the sponsor is the one that you're buying with. They're the one who are going to be running the project. So they're going to they should be presenting you with a due diligence packet and a private placement memorandum, typically, for you to read through.
And so you should have a really good lawyer involved?
Yes. Always good to have extra counsel to look through these things. It's also something that I believe you don't need to be an attorney to read through it, but you need to put your reading hat on and get to digging, because they can be pretty expansive. And you need to be able to cut through the BS, because there's some of that out there. There's other operators who are very straightforward. And you got to remember that they're in the investment world, there's no promises, right? These this is no promise of past performance. We've done this well in the past. This deal could be different. They'll admit that up front, and you just need to be aware of that. There's still risk involved. Nothing is risk free. Going outside your door isn't risk free, but you just need to be aware of that.
Okay, so what about napkin math? What's that?
We do that. We do that all the time in real estate in general, and it's bad math. It's real basic, right? It's not a spreadsheet. It's writing down some numbers on paper, kind of like we did with, hey, if you're buying a property for $1 million, you got 500,000 in depreciation that you've done. You're going to owe 25% of whatever you depreciated. So you can do that math in your head. $125,000 you're going to owe. Oh, well, it appreciated 500,000. What are my federal, what are my state capital gains that I've got to pay? That's another 25%. So that's another 125,000. So I've got 250,000 in taxes that I've got to pay unless I do a 1031 exchange. I can leverage 250,000 that much further if I just do a 1031 exchange, because I can buy a bigger property. I can get more debt and more leverage to go bigger. But it's just doing kind of like hey, is this worth it? Is this worth getting? And then you would really sharpen your pencil and get into the nitty gritty and the exact percentages of everything. And that's something you should probably talk to your CPA about.
Now, what advice would you give to a person who is just learning about this for the first time and they have investment property that they're looking to sell? What advice would you give them?
What I have found is that most people who are newer to real estate, they don't really have to worry about a 1031 exchange that much. They're just getting started. They really need to find a better deal rather than defer their taxes. They're more about finding the best deal, and that's okay. You need that higher return on investment than saving that $20,000 on taxes a lot of times. I know you're looking at it that way, but to be able to detach yourself and say, yeah, but if I did the 1031 exchange and I was stuck with a property that only gave me 8% return, how much would I lose 5 years down the road versus paying the taxes and finding that better property that's going to pay me 20-30%? How much better would I be off in 5 years? So it's taking a step back. It's thinking about it. Most people who are long-term investors, they've had a property. It's the retirees. It's the people who are retired. They've had a few properties they've managed. They've had them for 20, 30 years. They're fully depreciated. They bought them when they were $50, $60, $100,000. Now they're worth $500,000. Who knows? But they've seen a lot of appreciation. That's when the government's like, all right, now you're going to pay. If you're ever going to sell this thing, you're done managing, you're done doing these things, you're going to pay. And that when they talk to their CPA and their CPA is like, yeah, you're going to owe a lot. That's when they freak out. And that's when they're looking to do a 1031 exchange and try to find out about it. And then they are like, well, I don't want to buy more property. I don't want to manage more. I'm ready to be done. What other options are there? And there are a lot. There are a lot of passive income options. You can invest with partners into an apartment complex deal where they're doing all the management and you're just a capital partner. You can do a 1031 exchange into that and get your return. And there you can go into a Delaware statutory trust, which is similar. It's a way to buy a small percentage of property. It could be an Amazon distribution warehouse. It could be a portfolio of properties and you're buying 0.23% of each one. And so your money goes into basically a diversified Delaware statutory trust that practically guarantees a payout of a certain percentage. So completely passive, deferred your taxes. Now you're just collecting checks. You can put everything into a living trust. You can do a 721 exchange off of that. There are a lot of options set up for those who are in that retirement phase of their real estate life because it's so needed.
Mhm.
It's less needed, to bring the whole point back around. It's less needed when you're younger and active and growing in your real estate investments. It's much more needed when you've been holding something for a long time. You need something that's simple and ready for you. You need a guaranteed 1031 exchange property. That's when you're looking into some of these other options.
That's awesome. Listen, how can my followers find you if they needed to ask you questions or if they needed to do some business with you? How would they find you?
You can go to our website, aa1031.com. Our company is called American Accommodators. We're more of a boutique 1031 exchange accommodator, qualified intermediary. We are not a giant title company. And we have found that's better because we can give more direct personal service and advisement for people doing a 1031 exchange, and we're faster. A lot of these title companies you're just another number in their system, and they'll tell you, we'll get you your documents and do everything in 10 days, and you can't ever get a hold of them.
Understood.
So just a little bit different, but that's what we do.
What you do is awesome. I mean, I've learned so much in this short period of time. And that being said, is there anything that you didn't tell me about that maybe you would want to leave my viewers with?
If you, I have so many things I could talk about, but if they want to ask about a 1031 exchange, if they want to ask about, I also am on the acquisition side for a REIT that purchases real estate all across the nation. So I'm on the ground level of what kind of properties we buy, how they're analyzed, what that looks like. They also offer a Delaware statutory trust product. So I'm not a registered representative of them at this time, but I do know kind of what's going into it. I've seen people do so many things with a 1031 exchange. I usually try not to give people too many options because then they get frozen. So I'm open to anything. Hey, can I do this? How would I do this? Ask me those questions. Don't say like, well, what am I supposed to do? Because I have too many options for you.
I am that person. If you give me a whole bunch of things to focus on, I'm going to focus on all of them and nothing will ever get done.
And that's the thing with a 1031 exchange. You have time constraints and it has to get done.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing people need to be aware of if they're looking into it. You've got some deadlines and some timelines that you've got to work with.
So again, focus on that 45 days. You have 45 days to make that happen. Listen, Nathan, thank you so much from the absolute bottom of my whole heart. I appreciate you being here. You are awesome, knowledgeable, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. I'm here to help. I love being able to share what little knowledge I've acquired over my short lifetime on this earth.
Short lifetime on this earth, yes, but you have accomplished so much. So again, thank you.
Thank you, April.